How's it going, Yankee fans? Welcome back to Fireside Yankees with Alex and Ryan. So we wanted to take a little bit of a different approach in today's episode and build what we think would be a perfect offseason for the Yankees and how they could reinforce several positions, upgrade the rotation, keep Juan Soto, but still get better substantially, to be quite honest with you. And we have a couple of really good ideas that we think are realistic. And, we've discussed how, Marcus Stroman may not be in their plans. Mark Feinsand of MLB.com said he doesn't think Stroman is in the Yankees' plans. So why not trade him? And we have a little bit more of a comprehensive trade that lands us a first baseman, a left-handed relief pitcher, and we offload some of that salary, and another team gets a starting pitcher. So we're kind of interested to see. We think this is realistic, Ryan. We think this could be a method of the Yankees getting much better at first base, keeping their superstar outfielder, adding a really big pitcher and a nice left-handed bullpen arm, all while staying around $300 million in luxury tax salary, which is where Hal Steinbrenner wants to end up. He said you don't need to spend $300 million to build a winning team. Well, I have news for you. It's going to cost you that much with what the Dodgers are doing. You're going to have to spend a lot of money to beat the Dodgers now because they are building what is a super team, and you're not going to be able to do it with $250 million payroll. You're going to have to be around $300 million. So we're going to kind of settle in around that number. We found a couple ways to offload some salary. So Ryan, first and foremost, in this instance, the Yankees get Juan Soto. Tell me about what you think his contract would be, how you think this unfolds. Obviously, this is the first domino to fall, and what we think would be a really good offseason for the Yankees.
Yeah, so, it has to be Juan Soto. There's no, I will give the Yankees an F or a D on every offseason that includes not signing Juan Soto. That's how I feel. Maybe that's fan emotion. I don't really care. It's an F, or maybe if I'm feeling nice that day, a D minus if they don't sign Juan Soto. They could sign every player to an extremely market-friendly deal. I don't care. The first deal they have to do is sign Juan Soto. And I believe it's going to be a 15-year, $750 million deal with some deferrals to cut the AAV from $50 million towards the luxury tax to about $46 million towards the luxury tax. That increases the Yankees' current payroll of $238 million in terms of luxury tax money, according to Fangraphs, to roughly $284 million. Now, I think that Juan Soto is worth $750 million. People can disagree with me on that. I think he's worth it. I think that the price of a superstar will go down, will only increase, and Soto's money will only look better as the years go on. Look, I know that you guys, I've heard people say 750, I wouldn't go there. You just go and try to spread the money. I don't care. I really don't. I don't. There's no spread the money offseason that makes you better than if you just sign Juan Soto. He is the equalizer. You saw it last year. When the moment was big, he got bigger. When the moment was big for other guys, it wasn't the same, right? It wasn't. And this team, it felt different because Soto was here, and he has to be here in 2025 if they want to feel like the dominant team in the American League. So, Alex, I don't know how you feel about that, but Soto has to be back if the Yankees want to be that team.
Of course. Now, you said $750 for 15 years. It's a lot of money, but it's not about the overall number. It's about the years, and the Yankees seemingly would create some deferrals in this instance, and they would also position themselves to give Soto outs in this contract. So if he wants to take an out in the third year or the fourth year, he will have the freedom to do that when he's 29 or 30 years old. So I think they will be as flexible as possible to keep him for the long run. But $50 million per season, yes, it's substantial. But if you fast forward 3 or 4 years in the future, contracts are going to keep going up. With inflation, with the money that teams are spending on big talent, there's not anyone coming up like Juan Soto in the immediate future. Bobby Witt's the only guy that comes to mind as that true superstar. But I just don't see how another player is going to replicate Juan Soto's kind of excellence and his fortitude at this point. A young player coming up through the ranks. There always are. There's young guys, but Soto's a different caliber. This is a Hal Steinbrenner legacy moment, in my opinion. This will go down as the moment that defines how we view Hal Steinbrenner for the rest of his life. Remember when he signed Juan Soto to that big deal? Do you remember what he did to make sure this team was competitive? If you let Soto go, you're going to be locking yourself into really problematic contracts with players that are not going to produce the same amount. Injury-prone players, guys declining. That plan B is not something you really want to go down because the injury risk, the risk in general, is substantially higher. Soto is literally the same exact player every year. He's a monster. You don't really get guys that consistent very often. So, and especially at 26 years old, I think it's pretty exciting to see, what the Yankees have at their disposal, what they can do. But first and foremost, let's talk about how the Yankees build talk about first base. Let's talk about how they can reinforce the first base position. Anthony Rizzo had an 84 WRC plus last year, below average defensive player, injury prone, at 35 years old. He's a bad player, and they let him go. They saved $17 million in luxury tax salary by releasing him. Now, the question is, Ryan, how do we sit here and solve a position at a nominal cost? Because we don't want to pay $26 million for Cody Bellinger. We don't want to pay $20 million for Christian Walker. We could fathom the idea of paying $5 or $6 million for Carlos Santana, who brings substantial value at next to no cost, in context with what they were paying Rizzo last year. Or we get a little creative. So, Ryan, break down this trade that we constructed right before this episode began. We're talking about the San Francisco Giants. Joel Sherman said that the Giants were interested in Marcus Stroman last year. They might still be interested to acquire him. They need some pitching. Could the Yankees find a way to deal Stroman, take on a bit of money, deal Stroman, deal a prospect, and get a really solid lefty reliever in Taylor Rogers in return, and get a one-year rental and a Lamonte Jr., a guy that could be your leadoff man, 38% on base rate last year, hit like 260, has a little bit more power that he can tap into if he gets that launch angle up. Yankee Stadium would be perfect for him as a lefty. Can lock down first base. You have a pretty solid defensive average. Construct this trade for me. How do you think it makes sense for the Yankees? We think this is somewhat realistic.
Yeah, so the reason I believe this is a realistic deal is because the San Francisco Giants have a need for starting pitching. This is an organization that just lost Blake Snell. They don't seem to be inclined on spending big. If they do, it'll be for a top-of-the-rotation guy. There has been some talks about them being interested in Corbin Burns and Max Fried. I do think it's possible they land one of those starters, but if you want to replenish your rotation, importing two starting pitchers would certainly make a lot of sense, especially since it's not clear if the Giants are going to be able to land one of these top guys. Stroman is a fine fifth starter. I don't think he's anything more than that. I also think it's important to note the Yankees had negative 16 outs above average behind him. That was the worst defensive support a pitcher had this past season, and he would have allowed 14 home runs instead of 19 home runs if he played all of his games at Oracle Park. I'd finally like to add, in terms of Nestor Cortez, a fly ball pitcher. I think his game translates very well to San Francisco. He had a sub-4 ERA this year. He made 170 innings pitched. He is a solid starting pitcher. I think people kind of talk about him like he's a bum, like he sucks. I think that's a little extreme. This is an above-average starting pitcher. If you look at last year's numbers, this is a guy who has been an above-average starting pitcher in 3 of the 4 seasons where he's been a New York Yankee since 2021. I think that's important. I think he has value on the market, especially considering the prices these middle rotation guys are getting. Luis Severino just signed a 3-year, $67 million deal. I believe he's not better than Nick Pivetta. I believe, I don't know if he's better than Yusei Kikuchi, who got $63 million at 3 years. I think they're similar pitchers. Look at the remaining guys in the market. There's a lot of guys who are better than Sevy who are available. Is Sean Manaea going back to the Giants? Not if those are the prices that are going for those pitchers. I'd be very shocked to see a Sean Manaea get a top bid from the San Francisco Giants. I could be wrong, of course. But it's Alex, these prices are huge. And I did see from John Heyman that the A's made an aggressive bid on Sean Manaea, which, you have to wonder what that number looked like. But yeah, I think this trade makes sense for the Yankees. Lamont Wade Jr. fills the first base hole and becomes your leadoff hitter. Taylor Rogers, he's a lefty. The Yankees have no lefties in the roster, in their bullpen, so they need someone like Rogers in the organization. Alex, I think this deal makes sense for both sides, and the Yankees in this scenario would be saving $10 million, and in my opinion, getting the worst package of players here. I think they're not the worst package, but the Giants are offloading players they don't really want to have. The Yankees are offloading one player they don't really want to have, and then a player that, I think everyone would kind of want to have, which is a pitcher who's going to cost like $7 million in arbitration this year, and has been an above-average starting pitcher for most of his time with the Yankees.
Yeah, so listen, in this instance, you find yourself a first baseman, a leadoff hitter, a guy with a little bit more upside, and Lamonte Jr. I think this is an easy kind of decision for the Bombers. Taylor Rogers, good lefty. We don't have any lefty bullpen arms on the roster right now. You could sign Tim Hill. I think we agreed that Tim Hill would be a fine, veteran extension, like $1 million for 1 year, like really, really cheap. They've also been interested in reuniting with Tommy Kahnle. We'll see kind of if anything materializes there. I don't think they want to overspend. I think they can probably replicate what Tommy Kahnle offers at a much cheaper cost. He might get $5, $6, $7 million per season, coming off a pretty solid year, probably more like 5 or 6. But I do think the strategy here has already amounted to Juan Soto, Lamonte Jr., who is substantially better than Anthony Rizzo. It's night and day, like double the value you're getting from him. Taylor Rogers, who's a very solid lefty arm. You get rid of Marcus Stroman, and the last piece of this puzzle, Ryan, and we made it work financially by getting rid of Stroman's a good chunk of his contract. Junior's making not much at all, and we managed to get Max Fried in this situation. The financials do match up, and it does make sense. And Fried and the Yankees had a 90-minute Zoom call. Things went really well. He wants to have another meeting with the Yankees. He really liked what they had to offer. I don't see Max Fried as a plan B right now. I think that he's part of plan A. And I think that you could still trade Nestor Cortez because now you have 3 lefties in the rotation. It's not out of the realm of possibility that they do something like that. So, when you're looking at this, Ryan, Max Fried, he's a perfect fit. Southpaw, high ground ball rate, like 58-point-something% ground ball rate, and like up there, almost close to the 99th percentile. Strikeouts are still good. Like, he's still doing really good stuff in the game, and he's only 30 years old. So you're looking at a guy that has 67 innings of postseason experience. He's pitched in a World Series. He's going to be your number 2. He's an insurance policy for Garrett Cole if there's any injury problems next year. Cole's is 34, so you have a nice little insurance policy. Fried is an ace, so you have 2 aces. That's how you're going to compete with the Dodgers, guys. You need to have this type of talent available, and Fried has pitched 160 innings in 3 of his last 4 years, so he's been mostly healthy, maybe a couple nicks and knacks every now and then. I know in 2023 he pitched a lot less, but I think it was an anomaly over that 4-year stretch. What do you think about Max Fried? The financials work in this instance, but I think he would be a tremendous addition. They wanted Blake Snell. They couldn't get him. Fried's going to cost you about $26 million per season. Corbin Burns is at like $36 million per season. I don't see why this doesn't make sense. If you walk away in an offseason with Juan Soto, Lamonte Jr., and Max Fried and Taylor Rogers, I think we'd be over the moon. I don't think it's that crazy to assume it's realistic because these deals do make a lot of sense.
Yeah, in terms of Max Fried, he is one of the best starting pitchers in the league, as you mentioned. This is a guy who's a premier starter. I do have some concerns about how many innings he can give you, but I think it comes down to what you're going to get in the postseason. And if Max Fried is healthy and able to pitch in the postseason, you're going to have, as you mentioned, that number 2 or that 1B to Cole's 1A, or perhaps, Cole has a good year, but Max Fried has a year where he has a 2.8 ERA and he's your 1A. This is a guy who has a deep pitch repertoire. His velocity has only gone up as he's gotten older. He is entering his age 31 season. That does give me some concern, but I think he's going to be a strong starting pitcher for years to come. He has the pitchability, he has the pitch mix, he has the command, the repertoire, the poise on the mound to be one of the top starting pitchers in the sport. We'll see how the Yankees navigate the pitching market, and we'll see if 170 for 6 years is even what Fried ends up with. He could end up with way more based on these pitching contracts, but I think Max Fried's an excellent starting pitcher. Again, I have my concerns, I have my worries, but if the Yankees want to deliver on their promise of going out and getting better, I think where they need to invest the most money is their rotation and their pitching staff. Their pitching staff, yes, it's good. Don't get me wrong. It's not terrible. And I think they could run back their rotation and have a strong rotation. But I'd also argue that, their offense with Soto and Judge and just having Dominguez and having, a better first baseman is enough that you're going to score a ton of runs, that you're going to remain a very effective run scoring team. We'll see. We shall see. We'll see. I'm very excited to see if the Yankees can sign Soto or not. Obviously, that is the biggest question mark here. But Max Fried, if they were able to get him alongside Juan Soto, you get one of the best pitchers on the planet. You have one of the best hitters on the planet. You have 2 of the best starting pitchers anchoring your rotation. Carlos Rodon's now a 3-starter, and I'll tell you something, Alex. If Carlos Rodon's your 3-starter with the upside he has, he's a great 3-starter. Heel and Schmidt as your 4 and 5, that's disgusting. That's gross. They're excellent 4th and 5th starters. We talked about this with the rotation. They have a 1 in Garrett Cole and a lot of 3s. If you suddenly you have 2 1s and 3 3s filling out your rotation with 3 guys who could potentially be 2s if they have really good years. I guess they could also potentially be 5s. They're not great or just hurt all year. That's fair. But I think you could argue Rodon, Schmidt, and Heel all have reasonable upside to become a number 2 caliber starter on a postseason contender. That's when you build out a deep rotation. And then come October time, if you have at least 4 of your guys healthy, and the ALDS will be able to move one of them to the bullpen, and the ALCS, you require all 4, but if all 5 of them are healthy, you can do some things with the bullpen, right? Move Schmidt to a reliever role. Move Heel to a reliever role. Maybe Rodon has to move to a reliever role. That's the kind of stuff you want to deal with in the postseason. If we're being honest, if the Yankees got a more competitive start, maybe in Game 2, maybe they would have won. I still think the offense did them in the World Series, but you never know. This team could be really good if they have Fried and Soto, and this brings them up to $295 million. That's actually lower than where they were at last year. And Alex, we still have a little bit of work to do, just a little bit of work to do, right?
A little bit of work. And $5 million. You could do some stuff with $5 million. You could make a little move with $5 million. I mean, so at this point, we've solved first base with a way above average player compared to Rizzo, like substantial. We've solved Juan Soto's extension. We've solved the number 2 starter in the rotation. And we've solved the lefty bullpen arm. And assuming now you can kind of usher in Caleb Durbin, Jason Dominguez into prominent roles. But, if you have a rotation that's Garrett Cole, Max Fried, Carlos Rodon, Clark Schmidt, Nestor Cortez, and Luis Gil, Ryan, let's go down an unrealistic path. let's spin down a little bit more of an unrealistic path. Maybe you don't need to usher in Caleb Durbin. Maybe at this point you can trade Nestor Cortez to the Cubs for Nico Horner, or like maybe Nestor and a package with a prospect to get Nico Horner, an elite second baseman who's proven. Is that something that you could fathom? Because we have 6 people in this rotation right now. Maybe you just keep going. Maybe you're like, all right, let's step away from the realistic stuff. We know the Yankees like Nico Horner. We know they've been connected to him. Is there a way you can manage to offload Nestor Cortez in a deal maybe with a package with a prospect? Or would you look to kind of float Cortez for somebody else of interest?
Yeah, I mean, look, if they pull off that Lamont Wade Jr. trade, they'd have 5 starters. If they don't pull that off and they have 6 starters, which I think is a good scenario to talk about. What if the Yankees sign a starter, they only move Stroman, and they have 6 starters left? Because it is hard, not that it's hard to, but it is a little bit weird to talk about moving 2 starters in one trade unless you're sure you're going to sign the other one. If the Yankees were to trade both Stroman and Cortez, it would likely come after they sign someone like Max Fried. So, if we're talking about this in a what would be the right way to put this? In order of a timeline, if this was going to happen, this kind of offseason, which we're not saying it is, we're just saying we would like it to happen, it would be Soto first, then it'd probably be Fried second. I think Fried would move very quickly. And then you'd be in a situation where now you're out that, you add 46 plus $28 million. Now you're around that $300 million threshold, and now you got to figure out, you'd be at 305, and now you've got to figure out your rotation and your offense and all that stuff from there. I think in that scenario, you could get creative and say, all right, let's say we have Stroman and Cortez. Let's move Stroman first, and let's see what we can float for Cortez. I don't know if you guys saw that report, but Ken Rosenthal reported that the Rangers are talking about moving Nathaniel Lowe. Could Nestor Cortez be a fit? I know Lowe has 2 years of control. Cortez has 1. That presents a little bit of a complication, but have you seen that Texas Rangers rotation? And have you seen the reports about their financial situation? It's still not very good. The Rangers are not expected to be extremely aggressive on the free agent market. They have a $185 million payroll already. That's below the luxury tax, which that's fine, right? But if they want to sign a Nathan Eovaldi, if they want to make their rotation better, if they want to make their pitching staff better, if they want to upgrade the bullpen, I mean, Alex, their closer right now, according to Fangraphs, is Rosny Contreras. They lost David Robertson, they lost Kirby Yates. Those are 2 best relief pitchers. They need to fill out their bullpen. They have, I think the rotation might be fine, but even then they might want to add somebody else. Nathaniel Lowe might get moved for a pitcher. They have a lot of bats. They just signed Kyle Higashioka. They have Ezekiel Duran that they can move off the bench. They can do some things with their infield, maybe put someone like Josh Young at first base, or Josh Smith, former New York Yankee, at first base. They've got a lot they can do. I wouldn't be shocked to see Lowe moved, and maybe Cortez is someone alongside maybe another piece that could intrigue a team like the Rangers. Maybe it's maybe it's Marcus Stroman and Nestor Cortez, or maybe it's Nestor Cortez and a reliever. We'll see. Lowe wouldn't cost a lot. I think the thing that the Yankees would be targeting is they would like to get a position player that has a lot of success and is going to produce for them, specifically probably at first base. And then at the same time, it's a player who's arbitration eligible. They're cheap. They're not super expensive. You can get, cheap production. You could probably do a trade where you're actually offloading salary if you're dealing Nestor away. So the target number for arbitration is probably around $7 million or less. I'd also like to add, Alex, that having 6 starting pitchers is also not that bad of an idea. Maybe you deal out of one of your controllable starting pitchers. Maybe you say, you know what, if we can't do Nestor for someone who's going to be not as expensive in arbitration, what if we dealt Clark Schmidt for someone who is pre-arbitration? What if you dealt Clark Schmidt for a young infielder, a team that's desperate for pitching? Maybe they're willing to do that kind of deal. Who knows? I think the Yankees have if the Yankees sign a starting pitcher, they control the pitching market because they would have various pitchers who intrigue teams. Maybe they sell high on Luis Gil. I'm not sure I'm all in on that, but maybe they would. but having this is, I believe the Yankees should sign a starting pitcher, and I think you can agree with me on this, because the position player market outside of Juan Soto isn't necessarily enticing. I don't love paying Willy Adames. I don't love paying Alex Bregman. Don't love paying Anthony Santander. Don't love paying Teoscar Hernandez. Is there a player you like, go, I can't wait to pay them? Even Christian Walker. I'd have my reservations about signing Christian Walker. I think you would too. You know who you wouldn't, you know who teams also are going to have reservations about? Signing pitchers. And if you have a Nestor Cortez, you have a Luis Gil, you have a Clark Schmidt, and one of them are expendable, one of them are, yeah, you can move them, or one of them could become a reliever for you. You could say, we're either trading them or they're becoming a reliever for us, or we're using them as starting pitching depth. Man, other teams are going to be chomping at the bit to get one of those guys. They're going to be chomping at the bit because they're inexpensive. They'll trade a controllable bat. They'll do what it takes, because pitching right now, it's so expensive. I even think Stroman has some value on the market because of how expensive pitching is. Again, folks, Luis Severino just got 3 years, $67 million. He had a league average ERA. For context, his ERA minus, his adjusted ERA, was worse than Carlos Rodon's. He had fewer strikeouts, and he had a worse walk rate. So, Alex, you're paying a worse version of Carlos Rodon $22 million a year. Carlos Rodon makes $26 million a year. I would consider Carlos Rodon an overpay, right? I mean, you might be able to move Carlos Rodon in this market. That's how bad this market has become for pitchers. So, yeah, I mean, I think that the Yankees, if they were to sign Fried, they would probably sign Fried before they trade 2 pitchers away. So that's why we're talking about, would you think differently with Cortez? Because we know that a Lamont Wade Jr. trade, if you traded 2 pitchers, it wouldn't happen before you signed Fried. It just makes the Yankees could be in a very interesting situation if they sign Soto, a big time starter. That's how I view it.
Yeah, I mean, with the way that, as you're saying, pitching goes and how many injuries happen, you don't necessarily need to trade Nestor. You could always just have a six guys and maybe move on to the bullpen and then elevate them if an injury happens. It's always good to have more pitching, especially if you're going to trade one of your backup pitchers or your depth pieces in AAA, like a Will Warren or a Clayton Beeter, one of those guys. So we'll see what happens, though. I think the first portion of this is somewhat realistic. I think Soto's realistic. I think that Lamonte Jr. and Taylor Rogers, getting rid of Stroman, all realistic to a degree. Obviously, nothing's set in stone. Nothing's real until it happens, but we think these are, actionable moves the Yankees can be proactive in. Max Fried is realistic, in my opinion. The alternative to getting Jr. and Rogers would be trying to just offload Stroman's salary, sign Carlos Santana, and going in a bit of a different direction, more spending in free agency than trying to get creative with trades. So we'll see how things go, but once the Soto domino falls, everything is going to start crashing down over the next couple of weeks in December and probably into early January as well. But always happy to hear your thoughts down below on this kind of perceived plan that we've conjured up. We think this team gets a lot better with these moves. They are realistic. They can be executed. Just a matter of convincing teams to actually bite on it and giving the proper amount of depth and personnel from the minor league prospect pool and taking a little bit of money from Stroman's contract. You can make things work with how thin the pitching market is. Stroman's value, there's still value there. I know his velocity dipped a bit, but there's still value there. Another team will see. So let's see if maybe someone will bite on it, maybe the Giants. But always happy to hear your thoughts down below in the YouTube comment section. Make sure to like and subscribe as always, and we'll catch you guys on the next Fireside Yankees episode.
Perfect.